The golden hour light spilled gently across the lawn of the Hillcrest Lodge, a quiet retreat just outside of Atlanta. It was one of those crisp autumn evenings where the air feels electric with change. Our company, Blue Ridge Marketing Group, was hosting its annual corporate getaway, supposed to be a fun way to unwind, build some team spirit, and leave the daily grind behind for a weekend. I wasn't sure if I was in the mood for it, but I came along anyway. I guess I felt obligated. I stood off to the side near the patio, holding a half-empty glass of sparkling water, watching the sun dip lower behind the trees. I've always been more of an observer than a participant at these things. My name's Ryan Mitchell, by the way. I'm 34, been working in marketing for over a decade, and folks at the office know me as someone dependable, easygoing, a little sarcastic, but always getting the job done. That's kind of who I am. Now my wife, Brooke, she's the opposite in a lot of ways. 31, beautiful in that magnetic way that just pulls people in. Long brown hair, big green eyes that seem to sparkle when she's enjoying herself. And she's always been the type who thrives in a crowd. Flirty, energetic, the kind of woman who naturally draws attention without even trying. I used to tell myself that was just who she was, that it was harmless. But something felt off that night. I couldn't put my finger on it, not at first. Maybe it was the way her fingers brushed just a little too long on one of the guy's arms, or how her laugh carried across the patio louder than usual, almost like she wanted to be heard. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. Then came Cole Adams, one of my younger coworkers, just turned 28. Fresh-faced, always wearing that smug smile like he knew something the rest of us didn't. He sauntered over to me with a cold beer in hand and nodded toward Brooke. "Enjoying the view," he said with that grin of his. I forced a chuckle, the kind that hides the annoyance bubbling under the surface. "Nice to see everyone relaxing for a change," I said, keeping it neutral. But Cole wasn't done. His eyes lingered on Brooke just a second longer than necessary. "Your wife's the star of the show tonight, huh? Always the life of the party." I felt the tension spike in my chest, but I didn't let it show. That's just Brooke. She's naturally outgoing. You know how she is. Cole tilted his head like he was challenging me. "Friendly," he said, with a smirk that said he meant something else entirely. I wanted to snap at him, to put him in his place. But I held it in. This wasn't the time or place for a scene. So I kept my tone even and said, "Better be careful with that imagination of yours, Cole. It might land you in trouble one day." He just laughed like it was all a big joke. "No offense, man. Just messing around." I didn't respond. Just nodded like it didn't bother me. But inside, my blood was starting to simmer. I looked back toward Brooke. She was surrounded by coworkers, mostly men, laughing and tossing her hair over her shoulder like she didn't have a care in the world. I hated that I was even thinking like this. We had history, years of memories, good times, late-night talks, dreams about the future. But something in me was starting to shift. That easy trust one always had, it wasn't feeling so solid anymore. "Hey, Ryan," a softer voice said behind me. I turned and saw Olivia. She's our HR manager. Kind eyes, calm energy, always seemed like she actually cared when she asked how you were doing. She smiled gently. "She's really lighting up the room tonight," she said, nodding toward Brooke. "That must be tough." I gave her a weak smile. "Yeah, I'm used to it. Comes with the territory." But Olivia's face got serious. "Just be careful, okay? Not everything is always as it seems." I blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" She shook her head, backing off a bit. "Nothing specific. Just saying, trust your gut." As she walked away, her words echoed in my head. I tried to shake it off, tell myself it was nothing, that it was just office gossip or my mind running wild. But deep down, something in me was already changing. I didn't want to believe it yet, but a quiet alarm had started ringing in my chest, and it wouldn't go away. The sun kept sinking behind the trees, stretching long shadows across the hotel patio while fairy lights flickered to life overhead. The music had picked up, smooth jazz giving way to something more upbeat, something made for dancing. Around me, everyone seemed to be settling into that golden hour mood, drifting toward the dance floor or clustering near the fire pits with drinks in hand. It should have felt like the perfect evening. I put my empty glass down on a nearby table and exhaled, trying to shake off the anxiety that had been building all night. But I couldn't stop glancing back toward Brooke. She was standing near the pool now, bathed in the glow of the blue underwater lights, and of course, she was right in the center of another little group of guys. Cole was there, along with a few others from accounting, young, loud, always trying too hard to impress. I watched her laugh, head thrown back just enough to seem flirtatious. Her hand brushed one of the guy's arms again, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Maybe it was just her being her, but the way my stomach twisted told me I wasn't convinced anymore. "You all right, man?" I jumped a bit and turned to find Olivia again. She held a glass of red wine, her expression soft but sharp like she could see right through the fake smile I'd been wearing all night. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just tired." She followed my gaze and sighed. "Look, I'm not trying to stir anything up, but people do talk at these things." I tensed a little. "What exactly are they saying?" Olivia hesitated, clearly choosing her words. "Nothing solid, just chatter. People notice things. Brooke draws attention, and some folks think maybe it's not just harmless fun." The words stung more than I expected. I swallowed hard. I've always known she's friendly, but it's not what it looks like. "Maybe not," Olivia said gently, "but don't ignore what your instincts are telling you. Sometimes they're right." She gave my arm a light pat and disappeared back into the crowd. I stood there alone, trying to push her warning out of my mind, but it stuck like glue. I wasn't even sure what I was feeling anymore. Was it jealousy? Suspicion? Maybe both. Maybe more than that. I finally decided I couldn't just keep lurking in the shadows like some awkward extra in my own life. If I wanted answers, I had to face it head-on. So I started walking toward Brooke and the little circle of coworkers surrounding her, doing my best to act like nothing was bothering me. As I approached, the group shifted slightly, making room for me like I was just another guy stopping by to say hi. Brooke's face lit up when she saw me, big smile, arms looping around my waist like she was thrilled I'd finally joined her. "There you are," she said with a cheerful voice. "I was starting to think you ran off on me." I smiled, or at least I tried to. "Just getting some air." I glanced around at the others. Cole gave me that smug little smirk again, like he was in on some inside joke I didn't know about. One of the guys looked away nervously. I didn't miss the way their expressions shifted when I showed up. "Your wife's been entertaining us with some wild yoga stories," Cole said, clearly enjoying himself a little too much. Brooke laughed, one of those loud, exaggerated ones that felt too practiced, and nudged me playfully. "Gotta keep the conversation interesting, right?" I forced another smile, but every word felt heavier than the last. "She definitely knows how to hold a crowd," I said, trying not to sound cold. But there was an edge in my voice, and I could tell they all felt it. Cole raised his beer like he was making a toast. "I bet she does." A few awkward chuckles floated around the group. My jaw tightened. I looked straight at Cole, kept my tone calm, but firm. "Careful," I said quietly. "Some lines aren't meant to be crossed." He lifted both hands like he was surrendering. "Hey, no offense. Just messing around." I turned toward Brooke. She was still smiling, but there was something in her eyes now. Not concern. Not guilt. Something bolder. Defiant, even. I leaned down and whispered into her ear, "Can we talk for a sec? Just the two of us." She tilted her head but nodded and followed me away from the group, toward the edge of the patio by the pool. Once we were alone, I turned to face her, keeping my voice low and steady. "What's going on with you tonight, Brooke?" She frowned slightly, like she didn't understand the question. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb," I said, trying to stay calm. "You're hanging all over these guys. Cole's making comments, and you're not stopping him." She rolled her eyes and sighed like I was overreacting. "Ryan, it's just small talk. I'm not doing anything wrong." "It doesn't look innocent," I said. "People are starting to talk." "So what?" she snapped. "Let them. I'm allowed to have fun." I stared at her, searching her face for something. Remorse, maybe. But I saw none of it. Just annoyance. Just try to be aware of how this all looks, all right? I said. That's all I'm asking. Her expression softened for a second, but I could tell she still wasn't fully hearing me. Fine, she said. If it really bothers you, I'll chill out. I nodded, not exactly reassured. And as she walked back to the group, I noticed something flicker in her expression, a quick flash of something hard to name. Not guilt. Not shame. More like challenge. I stayed behind near the water's edge, staring at my reflection in the rippling pool. My own face looked back at me, distorted and unsure. Whatever this night was supposed to be, I had a gut feeling it wasn't over. Something was still brewing. And I was starting to think I wouldn't like what I found when it finally came to light. As the night wore on, I could feel it, something shifting. The music kept pulsing from hidden speakers, pulling more of my coworkers onto the dance floor. Laughter echoed across the hotel grounds, but for me, all of it felt distant. Like background noise in a dream you're slowly realizing is turning into a nightmare. I couldn't shake the feeling in my chest. Like something was unraveling, and I was just starting to see the threads come loose. Brooke had gone back to the group by the pool, slipping effortlessly into conversation with the same guys she'd been flirting with earlier. From where I stood, I could see her clearly, laughing, smiling, touching someone's arm again. It was like she hadn't even heard what I'd said. Like our conversation hadn't even landed. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Olivia again. She was quiet for a second, then said softly, "You really okay?" I didn't answer right away. Just gave her a tight smile. Trying to be. Her eyes followed mine toward the pool. She frowned. I know it's not my place, but you should know, people are talking more than you think. And not just about tonight. That made my stomach drop. What are they saying? She looked uncomfortable, swirling the wine in her glass. Nothing definite. Just, Brooke's always been friendly. But it's getting noticed. And some people think there's more to it. I wanted to laugh it off, tell her they were wrong. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I appreciate you saying something, I said instead. Olivia touched my arm gently. Just don't ignore what you already feel. Trust matters, but so does truth. She slipped away into the crowd again, leaving me with those words pounding in my chest. And the worst part? Deep down, I already knew. I didn't want to admit it, not even to myself, but I felt it like a bruise just under the surface. I decided right then that I needed clarity. I wasn't going to live in this fog anymore. So I made my way toward the spa wing of the hotel, somewhere quiet, away from the noise. I told myself I just needed to think. Get some air. Breathe. The hallways back there were dim, lined with soft lights and warm shadows. The perfect place to clear my head. But halfway down the corridor, I heard something. A sound that made me stop in my tracks. Laughter. Brooke's laughter. Not loud, not forced. Intimate. Playful. It echoed softly from the direction of the sauna area. My heartbeat kicked up as I walked closer, trying to stay silent. Her voice drifted through the air again, followed by a man's voice. Cole's voice. Confident. Smug. You always did know how to work a room, he was saying. Shame you've kept this side of you hidden for so long. Brooke laughed again. Maybe I was just waiting for the right audience. The words hit like a punch to the gut. My vision blurred for a second as I stood frozen in the shadows, hidden just out of sight. The door to the sauna room was slightly ajar, golden light spilling into the hallway. I crept closer, my footsteps silent, afraid of what I might see, but unable to stop myself. I looked through the crack in the door. And what I saw shattered something inside me. Brooke. My wife. Standing there without a single piece of clothing. Her back to me, body glowing in the soft amber light. Her posture, relaxed, confident, completely unashamed. Around her, several of my coworkers, guys I'd laughed with, worked late nights with, trusted. And Cole, right in front, casually twirling something in his hand. It was Brooke's underwear. He spun it on his finger like a prize, grinning at her while the others looked on, clearly entertained. So, he said, voice dripping with mockery, you think Ryan has any idea how generous you've been with the company tonight? The others laughed quietly. Brooke just smiled, brushing her hair back off her shoulder like it was nothing. "Ryan sees what he wants to see," she said. "And what he doesn't know won't hurt him." I stumbled backward, hand gripping the wall to keep myself upright. My heart pounded so loudly I thought they'd hear it. Everything in me screamed to go in there and scream, yell, demand answers. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something stronger kicked in, clarity. Cold, sharp, painful clarity. I needed proof. So with hands trembling, I pulled out my phone. I aimed it through the narrow gap in the door and took the pictures, one after another, documenting every horrible, soul-destroying moment. Brooke. Cole. The others. Each image was like a blade, slicing away the trust I'd spent years building with her. And then I left. Quietly. They never even knew I was there. I walked straight out into the night, barely seeing where I was going, barely breathing. The cold air hit my face, but I didn't feel relief. I felt rage. I felt grief. I felt hollow. I ended up at a bench in the farthest corner of the hotel gardens, far from the firelight and music. I sat there in the dark, clutching my phone, trying to understand how my world had just flipped upside down. How the woman I'd loved, trusted, could look me in the eye, smile at me, touch my arm, while doing that behind my back. And the worst part? She didn't even look guilty. That night, sitting alone beneath the trees, something inside me broke. But in its place, something else started to grow. A need for truth. For justice. For revenge. I sat there for what felt like forever, hidden beneath the oak trees at the far edge of the property. The rest of the hotel grounds still buzzed with laughter and music, completely unaware of the storm that had just erupted in my life. I couldn't hear the music anymore, not really. Just the sound of blood pounding in my ears and my own thoughts looping over and over. The pictures were burned into my brain, Brooke standing there in that room like she didn't have a husband. Cole spinning her underwear around like a trophy. The smug looks on all their faces, like none of it meant anything. I should have been furious. And I was. But it wasn't the kind of anger that makes you shout and throw things. It was something colder. Sharper. A quiet, seething rage that made every breath feel calculated. I stood up slowly, like I was dragging the weight of the entire night with me. My legs felt stiff, but I forced myself to walk. I knew what I had to do next. When I got back to the party, everything looked the same, but I wasn't. Something had changed in me. Whatever blind trust I'd been holding onto was gone. What replaced it was purpose. I found Cole first. He was leaning on the bar, back to me, sipping his drink like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just humiliated me in the worst possible way. I walked up behind him and said his name flatly. "Cole." He turned, startled. Then his expression shifted into that same casual smirk. "Ryan. You disappeared for a while, man. Everything all right?" I stepped closer, voice low and even. "Actually, yeah. I just needed some time to clear my head." He raised his eyebrows. "Well, looks like you found something out there." I pulled out my phone and held it in my hand, screen still dark. Funny thing about phones. They see things people think they're hiding. Cole's smile faltered. His eyes dropped to the phone, and a flicker of panic crossed his face. "I don't know what you mean," he said quickly. I looked him right in the eye. "I think you do. I saw everything. And now I know exactly who you are." He opened his mouth, probably trying to come up with some kind of excuse, but I cut him off. "Don't even try," I said. "You crossed a line tonight. A line you'll wish you hadn't." Cole's confidence cracked right there in front of me. His cocky smirk collapsed into a tight, uneasy frown. He looked around like he was suddenly aware of everyone else at the party. What do you want?" he asked quietly. I leaned in slightly, voice like ice. "Right now, nothing. But when the time comes, you'll know." And then I walked away. I didn't look back. Didn't give him a chance to spin some half-hearted apology. I was done listening to lies. Next, I spotted Brooke. She was near one of the outdoor heaters, talking to Olivia and a few other coworkers. Her smile faltered as soon as she saw me walking toward her. "Hey," she said, that fake warmth already creeping back into her voice. Feeling better? I gave her a tight smile. Much. Just had an enlightening talk with Cole. Her face twitched, just for a second. A flash of uncertainty in her eyes. Oh. What about? I let the silence hang between us. Long enough for her to squirm. Just some workplace stuff, I said casually. Nothing you need to worry about. Yet. That last word hit its mark. She stiffened, clearly trying to keep her expression neutral, but I could see the gears turning in her head. If something's going on, Ryan, you can just say it, she said, a little sharper than before. I glanced at Olivia, who met my eyes briefly, then gave a slight nod and stepped away. She knew. She understood more than she let on. I leaned in close to Brooke, lowering my voice to a whisper. Don't worry, I said. We'll talk. But not here. Not while you still have an audience to impress. Her mouth opened slightly, probably to fire back with some excuse or fake concern, but I was already walking away. I didn't need to hear it. Not tonight. Instead, I spent the next half hour walking around the party, talking briefly with each guy I'd seen in that sauna room. I didn't confront them directly, not yet. But I looked each one in the eye and let them know, without saying it, that I knew. Their laughter grew forced. Smiles tightened. They whispered to each other after I left, eyes darting around like prey sensing a predator nearby. The illusion they'd built, that smug little club of secrets, was crumbling. And I was the one tearing it apart, piece by piece. Eventually, I stepped away from the crowd again, retreating to the edge of the property, back to the quiet. I stood there in the cool night air, finally letting myself breathe. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. But instead, there was just this hollow ache inside me. The woman I loved had been smiling in my face while stabbing me in the back. And the people I worked with, respected even, they'd been in on it. Still, even with the pain sitting heavy in my chest, there was one thing I knew without a doubt. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. The morning sunlight bled through the hotel room curtains like it was mocking me. I hadn't really slept. Just drifted in and out of restless thoughts, all of them anchored around one thing, what I'd seen the night before. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring down at my phone. The photos were still there. Every image clear as day, every frame screaming betrayal. Brooke. Cole. The others. Not a single one of them had even tried to hide it. My jaw clenched as I got dressed. Every button I fastened felt like armor. The man who had arrived at this retreat was gone. What walked out of that hotel room was someone sharper, colder, someone who decided to take control. By the time I made it to the breakfast hall, the shift in the room was unmistakable. Conversations hushed when I passed. Glances shot my way, then darted quickly away. Word had started to spread. Rumors were like wildfire in our company, and apparently, last night's private show wasn't going to stay private for long. I took a seat alone at one of the window tables. Didn't even grab coffee. Just watched the room and waited. A few minutes later, Brooke walked in. She looked different. Paler. Frazzled. Her makeup couldn't hide the red around her eyes or the way she kept scanning the room like she was bracing for impact. She spotted me and started toward my table, moving cautiously. "We need to talk," she said softly, trying to sound calm, but her voice trembled. I didn't look at her. "Not here, Brooke. I think we've already given everyone more than enough drama." Her face tightened, and she backed away without a word. Right behind her, Cole showed up. His usual confidence was cracked, barely holding together behind a forced smile. He avoided my gaze, keeping close to a small group of guys who didn't look any better than he did. That's when my phone buzzed. Message from Robert Hastings. "Ryan, please meet me in conference room 2 at 9 o'clock. Urgent." I stood slowly, slipped the phone into my pocket, and walked out without saying a word to anyone. At exactly 9, I stepped into the conference room. Robert, the CEO of our company, sat at the head of the table. The guy usually looked calm, even friendly. But this morning, his expression was grim. "Take a seat," he said quietly. I did. "Ryan, I'm going to be direct," he continued. "Some serious allegations came up this morning. About misconduct. Involving your wife. And several of your coworkers." I met his eyes. I'm aware. Robert tilted his head. How aware? I didn't speak. Just slid my phone across the table and unlocked the screen. Start with the photo gallery, I said. He hesitated, then picked it up. His fingers tapped the screen. One photo. Then another. His face drained of color. Jesus Christ, he muttered under his breath. He scrolled for a while longer, then put the phone down like it burned his hands. This is worse than I expected. I nodded once. I didn't plan to bring it to you this way. But I'm not going to sit back and pretend it didn't happen. Robert let out a long breath. No. You shouldn't. These are your coworkers. This is your wife. And they made a mockery of both. There was a pause. Mark, Cole Adams, and the others will be suspended immediately. HR will begin formal investigations. And Brooke, he trailed off for a moment, then looked at me seriously. I'm sorry, Ryan. I really am. I swallowed hard. Just make sure they all face the same consequences. That's all I care about. You have my word, Robert said. I stood and walked out. By the time I made it back to the main hall, the dominoes were already starting to fall. HR was quietly pulling people aside. Cole was being escorted into another room, looking pale and shaken. Brooke stood near the reception desk, cornered by a pair of HR staffers. Her eyes were wide. She was clearly panicking. When she saw me, she tried to move toward me, but one look from me froze her in place. This wasn't something I was going to fix for her. She was on her own now. A couple hours later, the entire company had been gathered in the grand ballroom. Robert stood at the front of the room, grim and formal. He cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. I've called this meeting to address serious behavior that occurred during our company retreat, he began. Behavior that violates every standard of integrity and respect we hold. The silence in the room was suffocating. Robert didn't mince words. Effective immediately, the following employees will be suspended pending further investigation: Cole Adams, Thomas Garner, Drew Patterson, and Brooke Mitchell. Gasps. Shocked murmurs. Heads turning. Brooke looked like she'd been slapped. Her hands trembled at her sides, and she couldn't bring herself to look at anyone, not even me. Then, without warning, Robert clicked the remote in his hand. Behind him, the projection screen lit up. And there they were. The photos. One by one, they appeared. Blurred enough to keep things legal, but clear enough to make the message unmistakable. The betrayal was no longer hidden. It was out in the open, undeniable, and devastating. People gasped. A few turned away. Some whispered in stunned disbelief. Brooke covered her mouth and started to cry. Cole sat frozen, eyes wide, humiliated. Robert let the silence hang in the room like a heavy curtain. This is what happens when trust is broken, he said quietly. When respect is thrown away. Let it serve as a warning. I sat there watching the room react. Watching the people who had laughed behind my back finally squirm. And no, I didn't feel joy. But I did feel justice. The ballroom slowly emptied out, but I stayed seated. Everyone had seen the truth. The mask had been ripped off, the illusion shattered. There was no coming back from it, not for Brooke, not for Cole, not for anyone else who stood by and let it happen. She stayed frozen in her chair for a long time after it ended, makeup streaked with tears, hands trembling in her lap. I didn't move toward her. Didn't say a word. Eventually, she stood and walked to me. Ryan, her voice cracked. Please, can we talk? Just us. I looked at her for a long time, longer than I probably should have. Her face, the one I used to love without question, looked nothing like it used to. Maybe it was the guilt, or maybe I was finally seeing her clearly. We can talk, I said quietly, but I'm not sure it's going to help. We stepped out into the hallway, far from the remaining whispers and awkward stares. The corridor was quiet, cold, sterile. She stood there wringing her hands like a nervous kid caught cheating on a test. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she whispered. I made a mistake. I let things get out of control, and now I've ruined everything. I kept my back against the wall, arms folded. Did it feel like a mistake when you laughed with them? When you let them look at you like that. When you let Cole touch you. Her eyes welled up. No. I mean, yes. I don't know. I wasn't thinking. I was stupid. But I never stopped loving you. That part was real. I shook my head slowly. If love was real, you wouldn't have done what you did. You didn't just cheat. You humiliated me. You did it in front of people who respected me. You destroyed every ounce of trust we ever had. I know, she said, tears falling freely now. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But if there's even the smallest part of you that can give me another chance. There's not. I cut in softly but firmly. There's no part of me that wants to go back to what we were. That version of us. It's dead. You killed it. She flinched like I'd hit her. I didn't want to hurt her, but I wasn't going to lie either. Not anymore. I hope someday you figure out why you did what you did, I added. I hope you heal from whatever made you want to destroy something good. But I'm done being the guy who waits around hoping you'll treat him right. She just nodded, wiping her cheeks, her voice barely a whisper. I don't blame you. With nothing left to say, she turned and walked away. And just like that, she was gone. I stood there for a while, letting the silence settle over me. It wasn't peace yet, but it was close. It was the first time in a long time I'd felt like I wasn't drowning. That same afternoon, Olivia found me again. She didn't say much. Just stood next to me for a moment before placing a hand on my shoulder. You did what you had to do, she said softly. I gave her a tired smile. I know. Just wish doing the right thing didn't feel so damn awful. She didn't argue. Just stayed beside me. Sometimes silence is better than comfort. Weeks passed. Then months. I moved out, filed for divorce, and left Blue Ridge Marketing. There was no way I could stay in that company after what had happened. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was done letting that part of my life define me. Eventually, with a little help from Olivia, I landed a new position at a firm in downtown Atlanta. Crestview Enterprises. A fresh start. New faces, clean atmosphere. No history tied to my name. I was nervous on my first day, but something about it felt different. Hopeful. Anna Whitaker, the VP who hired me, greeted me at the door. We're lucky to have you, Ryan, she said. Your references speak volumes about your character. Sometimes character is all you've got left, I replied. She smiled like she understood more than I'd said. As the days went on, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not all at once, but piece by piece. And then, one day, Olivia showed up again. New job, same quiet grace. She stepped into my office like it was the most natural thing in the world. Looks like we both landed on our feet, she said, smiling. I guess we did. We didn't talk about Brooke, or Cole, or any of the rest. It didn't matter anymore. Eventually, someone asked me if I regretted how I handled things. I told them no. Because the truth, no matter how ugly, needed to be seen. The damage needed to be felt. And those who betrayed me had to live with the fallout they caused. I walked through hell and came out scorched, but stronger. And now, I'm no longer haunted by what she did. I'm defined by what I survived. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.